Welcome to Breaking Indecision. Sometimes, our decision to plan the next best move doesn't always go as planned. What do we do in a world of chaos and overload of information? Do we do the right thing and still end up in the wrong place? From around the world, the Trilateral Strategic Steering Group is broadcasting a deeper dive into those questions that bring the how to the foresight on strategic decision making. Welcome back. Do we have an exciting episode for you today of Breaking Indecision? Our esteemed discussion hosts.
My name is Matthew Brown. I'm a U.S. Air Force exchange officer in London working with the RAF. I'm a career special operations aviator. Flew for AFSOC about 15, 16 years prior to branching out into multiple staff assignments.
I'm Colonel Christophe Pubeni. I'm the French exchange officer working here at the Pentagon for almost 2 years and a half. My background, I'm an air mobility pilot. Started my career in 1998, C-160. And after I switched to OT&E, flying the Atlas.
We'll be interviewing a man that has lived through some of the toughest decisions.
I'm Air Chief Marshall Mike Wigston. I'm the UK Chief of the Air Staff.
So one of my questions are, because you've been able to command at every level through your tremendous career, so I would like to know what are the biggest challenges for today's senior leader in making effective decisions?
Well, Christophe, thank you. You're very, very kind with that question and a great compliment. Thank you. I think there are a number of factors at play which complicate the decision-making environment. Some are peculiar to our national capitals, and we all have our national idiosyncrasies around our political systems and our constitutions, and they they certainly add noise into the decision-making process. But I think there are some general ones as well that we would recognize as senior military leaders. And I think the most obvious one, the most pressing one that we are grappling with is around this data world we now inhabit, this technological revolution which is gathering pace around us. And in the military domain, the operational domain, the vast amount of information and data which is now, in some respects, is literally drowning the ability for people to make decisions. So getting our heads around how we operate in that data-rich environment and take advantage of it. And there are some challenges in that. The challenges are structures that we have inherited from our predecessors, our battle-proven structures, our 20th century and early 21st century proven structures may not be the right structures for a much more free-flowing, multi-path information environment that really gets restricted when we try to apply our hierarchical rules. The other area where I think we have to get our heads around, and we're not doing it sufficiently yet, is to work out how we as senior decision makers cohabit with machine learning all the way up to artificial intelligence. It's something that I don't think my generation has been properly prepared for, and I have a nagging concern that right now the generations coming through as a core skill are not getting the training and the skills they will need when they find themselves as senior leaders. And because we're all base-fed organizations, we take 35 years to curate our senior leaders. We need to get on with it now in basic training, in our officer academies. We need to upskill our people with the data skills, which I would observe are insufficient even now for the sort of hybrid machine assisted AI decisions that are now available to us. And we've got to understand the data. We've got to be better at using the data for empirical decision making. And again, a lot of the 19th and 20th century leadership studies, the studies of great military leaders, there's a lot of talk about that instinct and those leaders that made the decisions based on years of experience coupled with a sharp mind and gut feeling of what's the right course of action. Well, now we've got machines saying, challenging that, and we've got machines that actually are able to absorb vastly more information and perhaps come out with a different solution to that instinctive military leader of the past. And again, if that's a really uncomfortable place to be for people who have not been used to making decisions on the basis of empirical statistical evidence, that is now the quandary that we face.
So it's interesting, and we've been chatting a lot. We had the opportunity to spend some time with General Brown last week, and the French Air Chief, Air Space Force Chief, a few weeks ago. And it's interesting how we compare art and science. But as we go into the workshop, I was curious, what are your expectations? What do you think we're going to be able to do about it based on our international and interdisciplinary audience?
I think there's certainly there are some mechanical basics that we can do. That in the UK, we would call it a training needs analysis. It's a bit like fixing the wiring and the plumbing. There are some fundamentals that we're not growing our leaders sufficiently well versed for being decision makers in this AI-enabled, data-rich environment. There's a bit of fixing the plumbing, fixing the wiring, and that's the easy bit. There's no doubt in my mind that that's the easy bit. The more difficult bit is the very human element of making a decision in that environment, making a decision where you might be advised on a course of action by some piece of machine learned software or AI, and you've got no idea how they came to that conclusion. But time and time again, that machine, that system comes up with the right solution. That's a very uncomfortable place for a leader to be in, taking the advice that they don't necessarily understand how a machine has come to that conclusion and come to that decision to offering that course of action. So there are some key sort of psychological elements to this, as I say, some very human elements to this, as to how do we better prepare our leaders to find themselves in those situations. We've got to train for this, and we've got to find ways of training our people in that challenging information overload environment where we are absolutely testing everybody to their limits in terms of the number of variables, what they're dealing with. But we've got to increasingly get our heads around how do we do that in a digital environment where the command and control, the passage of information, the volume of information is in a quantum scale entirely different to anything that our predecessors dealt with.
So to jump on a little bit on that, as you know, this year it is the United Kingdom who is leading the study, and we are now at 10 days of our gathering in Edinburgh. So I would like to know, what are your hopes for this period of study, sir?
With these TSSG workshops, it's a fantastic opportunity to bring a diverse set of minds together, diverse experience, different nations, different forces. And so the opportunities of that has already got the makings of a really powerful intellectual group that is going to be able to make some key observations. I hope the group is be able to just testing through some of those challenges that we face as senior leaders in this new environment. Those challenges I spoke about earlier around the volume of data, how do we better cope with that? And I think, something that gathered from me talking about it, that preparing our people and doing a much better job of preparing our people for that AI-assisted, AI-led decision-making, which is undoubtedly how we are going to operate in the future. And I have this nagging concern that none of our air forces are preparing our leaders in 30 years' time for what they might need. And I think this is something, we need to get ahead of the curve on, because upskilling our people now, upskilling our junior leaders now at command and staff courses, I'm not saying we need to throw all of the war history books out the window and bring in data manuals, but I think we probably need to rebalance slightly across all of our command and staff training. A little bit less Sun Tzu and a little bit more what Silicon Valley is pushing out.
Well, I think we got time for one more question. Really, just briefly, we're heading out the door, as Christoph said, very shortly to do this workshop. Do you got any recommendations or challenges for our gathered experts from academia, industry, and defense?
No, I don't. In terms of the workshop, as I say, I applaud the opportunity to bring people together. Diversity in the room is going to be really powerful. And what I'm hoping for is that the result of you getting together, that some of those challenges are thought about, are articulated. As 3 air and space chiefs, we can get together and identify common areas that we can take forward with our respective organizations. Those have to be what we're aiming for out of this. And my experience of the TSSG over the last few years is that we will get exactly that.